Hello everyone, I'm James. Hopefully y'all can hear me. Um, so today I'm going to be working on a new API for libshumate, a simple map API. So the idea of this is to make it easier to display an app. Just a second, I am getting feedback. Oops. There we go. Okay. Anyway, so I'm going to be creating an API. Right now, libshumate is a little bit complicated. Like I said in my last live stream, if we go to the demo here, the code is a bit complicated just to show a map. For example, see right here is the code to change map sources. So it's like 12 lines of code just to switch the base map style. And I want to simplify that. Now in the last video, in the last live stream, I started working on that by doing some stuff with the license so that it would automatically pull the license text from the layers. But we've discussed with the maintainers, and we actually want to do something a bit different. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually revert that commit, which was right. Revert this commit. And it's going to give me a, let's see. All right. Get continue. All right. So we've reverted that commit. Just no problem. Sometimes it happens. But what we're going to do next, let's go back to my agenda. So I'm going to, first I'm going to make an outline of the API in the header file. So let me go ahead and create that. Copy the license header over. Create a object. It's going to directly subclass widget. And then we need to add it to our mason.build. So C file. Here. And let me make the C file. And I'm going to go ahead and make it a final class right now. If we want to change that in the future, we can. But it's not an API break to make a final class no longer final, but it is an API break to make a non-final class final, because someone might have subclassed it, and making it not final anymore, or making it final would break that. So I'll go ahead and make it final for now, and if we need to change that later, we can. It just makes some of the code a bit simpler. Alright, so we've got that. Let me make sure that it builds before I go too much further. It looks like it's going to try to recompile some dependencies. So let me go ahead and start on this API. So obviously we need to be able to create a new map. We want functions to switch map styles, add overlay layers, and show and hide the various controls. So this widget, this widget is going to automatically create the scale and compass and license widgets, that kind of thing. I'd also like it to have some buttons that can be enabled for zooming in, going to the current, not sure if we want to do going to the current location because that would require pulling in GeoClue, but it's always something we could try to do in the future. But yeah, we want to have all the basics that you need sort of automatic as part of this API. So we want set map source. It's going to take, is it a shumate map source? Yeah. Of course, we need self. It's going to return void. So this, the map source is going to be a property, and the benefit of that is that you'll be able to bind to it. Like in your UI file, you can bind it to, say, a dropdown if you want. Be able to get the map source. Go. It's giving me errors because it's not built yet. It's okay. Alright, so we have the base map source. We're going to have, if it's a shumate layer. No, so this is void. On shumate. Add, let's call it add overlay layer. So this, let's say you want to show a path or a current location or something like that. You would, or say markers, at map markers, you would use this. You also want a function to remove an overlay layer. So that'll take that layer and obviously remove it from the map by just the object pointer. So we've got the map source, we've got overlay layers. Now we probably want an insert overlay layer too that will take an index. So insert overlay layer. Index. So that should be good for now. Next, so we've got the map style, we've got the overlay layer, overlay layers. Now we want to show and hide controls. So let's do, go ahead and make those properties. So get show compass. Set show compass. That'll be basically the same for the other things. So compass. It's going to be license scale. We need to import include. Let's see. Sorry. Yeah, okay. Map source.h, and we need layer. Alright, see if that builds now. And well, it gave us a lot of unused variable warnings, but it does compile. So very good. And last, we have the buttons. So I think first, I'll just start with zoom buttons. Alright, so we've got basic API. It's quite a number of functions. That should be good to get us started. Most of these are going to be getting and setting properties. So this is a property in all 4 of these. And then these 3 functions will just modify a list of layers. So now that we have that, go ahead and just copy all of this to here, and we can start creating them all. So use this really cool trick that Builder has. It's Multi-Carat Editing. So I'm holding Control right now, and every time I click, it places a new caret. I'm going to hit all the places where there's a semicolon, backspace all of them, press Enter, add function bodies, and there we go. Should be, no, that won't work very well. Okay, so we've got all of our function bodies. I'm going to go ahead and put blank spaces between them. Probably should have done that while I was in multi-carat mode, but oh well. Alright. So now we can start filling all of these things in. So start with the properties. Prop map source, prop show prop show since and scale. Now that we have those, we need to fill in this. So to get the property, set object. I'm gonna have to go back and check the ownership rules for all of this. I think that's correct. And I've been doing this all wrong. It's show scale, show compass. Although, eventually, So one thing to think about is we might we might just want to make the widgets themselves the property. And then you can just take map.compass.visible. Might be do that. No, yeah, let's do that. That'll be a lot more useful. except the zoom buttons. That's not going to work for. But I'm going to try it and see how it goes. I'll always make changes later. So I need to change all this. And of course, we need to all of those. And there we go. So that's all changed. I think index is a reserved where it's like a built-in function. So maybe we shouldn't use that as an argument name. There we go. That'll remove those. All right. We've got get compass, get scale, get license. So we're going to do later here. So is it complete? Right, so we need to change the return values of these. Oh, they were never right in the first place. Okay. So that's a shumate compass. This one's going to be license. And a scale. Alright. Got all that. That should update soon. Now we need to do these property setters. Set. It's that simple. We just say it's a map source. If we're getting the maps or setting the map source property, we call our function, which we'll define later. We get the value out of the G value. And since this is still Boolean, we need to change this. And so that should be our getters and setters, or our get property and set property. Now let's go ahead and fill in some fields in our struct for us to actually put those properties in. So we're going to license. We're going to have more fields up here later, because we're going to have other things we need to store, like the layers. Actually, let's go ahead and do that. Have our overlay layers, and we're going to need like a widget for the zoom buttons. Actually, several widgets for that. It's going to be a box and then individual buttons, all that kind of stuff. Okay. Got that. Let's make sure it builds. Conflicting types. Oh, yeah. So we changed that. Well, we changed all these function signatures, and now they're all wrong. It's one of the less pleasant things about C, is it's quite verbose. I've grown to like it for some reason. I'm not quite sure. Maybe it's because my day job is web development. It's kind of a nice break from that. But it's kind of fun, kind of annoying at times. It's, it's programming. Programming in a nutshell. Okay, so while we're getting those properties to work, let's go ahead and fill out the setters for them and the getters. So get license is pretty simple. What we want to do is first make sure that we're actually the arguments passed in are valid, because in C won't check that for you. So we'll go ahead and do it ourselves. Make sure that it is in fact a simple map object, and if it's not, print an error and return null. Otherwise, we're just going to return self license. Create a documentation comment. Simple. And now this comment is important. It's for the GObject introspection, and it lets us know and lets the various language bindings know that this function does not transfer any ownership of the object that it's returning. So you can sort of borrow it from the map license, or from the simple map object, but when the simple map object is destroyed, the license is going to be destroyed too, unless you hold your own reference to it. So the rest of this is just documentation, but this transfer none is important for correctness in bindings. You can pretty much copy-paste most of this. So get compass just returns the compass. Scale returns the scale. We've got our getters. Now the setters are more complicated because they're going to need to mess with the actual widgets. They're going to need to add and remove things. So let's go ahead and get that stuff in place. We've got, let's see. So init happens very early on. So we probably don't want to do anything there. What I'm actually going to do is use the constructed virtual function, virtual method. And constructed is called after any construct properties are set, which is what we want, because if you construct a simple map widget with your own compass and license widget, we don't want to construct one and then have it immediately overwritten. That would just be sort of wasteful, so we're going to do it in constructed. Go ahead and copy that, because we're going to need it. Let's see. Also, the other thing, though, is if you explicitly set it to null, that's not going to work. So I wonder if we do it this way. Or the other thing we could do is, yeah, you know what? We're actually going to not have any of these setters. I'm going to go ahead and make them Got to think about how I want to do this. Look up so we want it to be buildable with GTK Builder in UI files or in Blueprint, something like that. We want to make that API easy to use as well. But I'm not. Probably we want to use the internal child system, but I'm not quite sure how that works. Okay, so I think, yeah, we can, with internal child, it'll set properties on it, but it won't require, it won't like set a new one. So we're going to go ahead and delete that, and we're going to make these widgets, the widget properties read-only. So it'll create it in init, and you won't be able to change it after that. Or you won't be able to change it at all. You can only set properties on it. So in that case, we don't really need constructed. We can just use init. So what we're going to do is make a new license. Need a viewport. Oh, and that's right, we need the actual map widget. Because this is sort of a wrapper around the existing widgets. So, we need an actual map. First, we create the map. See what the ownership on that is. Imagine, yeah, it's transfer none, so we don't have to worry about that. Then we create a compass with that viewport. And the scale is also going to need that viewport. The license doesn't, though. Then we need to add all these things. So let's see, now I need to look up. So we're going to need to use an overlay layout. Now in GTK3, you would have subclassed GTK overlay, but in GTK4, I believe the better way to do it is to use a layout class. Okay, so we can't use overlay layout. Let's see what these are. There is an overlay layout, but it says it expects its widget to be a GTK overlay. It's not designed to be used specifically. Let's see. Okay, so I think we want a bin layout. Yeah. So let's see how is that. I believe it's a class function on Widget. Yeah, so set layout manager type. So that's going to go in class init. Set layout manager type, and we're going to take layout. That's going to set our layout manager. That way, we'll have the map on the bottom and everything else will stack on top of that. When we go down to init and we start adding stuff, let's see. Set that parent. Okay, yeah, so we use set parent on the child, which is different from GTK3. In GTK3, you'd have a container of some sort, and you would have, I'll add child there. But we're going to do set parent. Just going to add it to self. Now that's going to not quite sure how the memory works with that. I'm going to have to do some research later and see whether we need to unref the license at any point. Do the same thing with the compass scale. And with the bin layout, we're going to use the H-align and V-align properties to set their locations within the widget. But we'll do that later. And we also need to create a map source. Although, I probably should start with null. Start at null, and because you need to set one. Maybe we want to have a default one, but we'll think about that later. It's a detail we can iron out. Hello, I see a chat message. Hello there. Glad y'all could join me for a bit of coding. I'm not sure how interesting this is. Just me typing away. But I guess you'll like it, so keep doing it. Let's see. So to get the map source, we want our card here. Okay. We've got all of those. Now we need to initialize the properties and tell GObject like what all the types and names of all the properties are. So to start, find that. It's a libshumate compass. Now for the flags, so it's not writable, it's just readable, so we want readable. Static strings is just a sort of micro optimization saying that it doesn't have to like copy all of the strings and deal with memory management. They're static. This should be type compass. The other thing is, so we don't need explicit notify because it's just readable. So compass, have the same thing for the license and the scale, license, prop, scale. Then we need to install those properties. That's just install properties. And there we go. We've initialized those. We also need show zoom buttons, and that's going to be a Boolean property. Here we want it to be read-write, static strings, but also we're going to have explicit notify. Now what this does is it allows us to optimize when the notify signal is given. That can be important because if you call the setter but it doesn't, with the value that it already has, we can avoid calling notify, which sometimes is a tiny optimization and sometimes it's a fairly large optimization, depending on what is listening to that notify signal. And then finally, we have our object property, which is our map source. This one's going to be read-write. And we also want set notify. Alright, so we've initialized all of our properties. And so now we need to do the set map source. Now, set map source is basically going to be this demo code that I showed earlier. It's even got the same name, set map source, but it's going to be all implemented in libshumate instead of in the application that's using it. And so it's going to need to check the, not going to need to handle all the license stuff, handle the viewports, viewport reference map source, all that kind of thing. You know what? I'm actually just going to copy this. So Control-C, Control-V. We're going to need to add some stuff. We need our guards here. Now here, you can set the source to null. It's probably not recommended because then you're going to have a blank map, but I suppose we'll allow it. So source equals null or to map source. So we check those. Now, here's where that explicit notify thing comes in. If map source that we're setting, if the existing map source equals the current source, we're just going to return early. And at the bottom, when we call notify by pspec, so this, since we had explicit notify, we need to explicitly notify that the property has changed. And also because it's in a public function, we need to make sure that that signal is called. But if the setter is called but it didn't actually change, then we can return and we don't need to notify anyone that it changed because it didn't. So now we need to just fix up all this stuff. Map source. For consistency, I'm going to call it all map source. Now the other thing, I said we were going to need to add more fields later. One of them is tile layer, because we can't directly add the map source to the map. We need to add it to a tile layer and then add the tile layer to the map. So we're going to go ahead and put that in. You can add more tile layers of your own on top if you want, but it's just easier this way. Most people are going to want to deal with just map sources instead of creating a tile layer and all that. And you're always going to want a tile layer. There's not a whole lot of situations where you want a map with no tiles. Make sure that's included. Right, did we change that? So it's a map layer now. So let's change that. Call it map layer. Make it a map layer. Let me scroll down to where all the errors are. It's going to be a map layer. Source. Map source. So for the viewport, we need to get the viewport from our map. Now just a C style, style thing that we use in GObject, I'm going to declare the variable up here, but we're going to wait until after these checks to actually set it. And that way we're not dereferencing anything before we check that it is actually of the type that we expect it to be. We always want to fail early, if at all possible, because that prevents bugs from spreading. That helps with debugging, that kind of thing. Basically, if you have invalid data, you want to catch it before it can do any damage. Especially important in C, which has no memory safety. As for why we declare all the variables at the top, I'm not quite sure. It's kind of just a convention that I was always told. It probably improves readability. It's our map. Alright, so that should hopefully work. We'll have to try it out. It should work well enough to go ahead and use it in demo. So I probably won't keep the demo using the simple map, but we need to test it somehow. So go ahead and do that. Get rid of all this stuff. We're just going to put a simple map in there and see what it looks like. You know what else we can do? We can do map source. Let's see what the correct property there is. Drop down. And selected item. But because the dropdown is using a list model, we can get the item out of that list model, and it'll just bind it. So whenever we change the dropdown, it'll all be in the UI, it'll change the map. Want sync 8. Alright. So now that we've got that, let's see. We just comment a bunch of this stuff. So we don't need set map source anymore. So we're just going to do that. Have any of that anymore, and the map is now a simple map. So let's see what that does. It'll probably not compile. And I was right. Okay, so yeah, it's init code. So the layers aren't going to work, the markers aren't going to work, so we'll just comment them out. Set map source. We don't need, so we're going to comment it out. And right, so the main shumate.h needs to know about map. Simple set scale, right. So when we made these read-only, we've got to remove those setter functions. It's right here. So because we can't set them, we don't need to put them there. And it immediately crashes, but we do get our scale and license, so I guess that's a good thing. So it's saying it's not a map. And it looks like we do need to destroy child widgets. So I'll get to that later. Map, get viewport. So there's two places that we do that. And look. So what I'm going to do now is open a a runtime terminal. This fatal criticals will cause GDB to break whenever this critical message is shown. And it'll show me exactly where it is. Could use print statements, but figure I'll do it the fancy way. Okay, so it's in init. Let's see. Shumate map. Okay, so Shumate demo window.c 178. Ah, I see. So it's that one. I was thinking it was an error in my simple map. It was an error in the demo. Right, now let's quit that. Try again. Right, well, we don't actually have a map, but it doesn't crash. So that's a good thing. And the license appears to work correctly. So it looks like we did something today. Always a good thing. So let's try, see what is going on with this map showing up. I suspect something with the widget sizing. So like, nope, it's that I didn't actually add the map. Okay. That would help if we add the map to the widget. We still have this error, so what I need to do about that is, it's actually not finalize, it's destroy. And I can copy it, I believe, from, let's see, maybe map has a good one. There's some code somewhere in here that just deletes all the children and destroy. But I don't remember what it is. Or I thought there was. Maybe it is finalize. So that's kind of weird. Well, I'll figure it out later. I'm sure that me sitting here pondering is doesn't make for a very interesting live stream. But we'll do, so the map shows up, that's good, but now I can't drag it. And the reason for that is the scale covers the entire screen, and that is bad. So, need to set those H-align properties when we initialize everything. So under init, let's class init under init. We want license, we want horizontally aligned to the end. We want it vertically aligned bottom, it's also the end. The license is going to be see, that's the license, the scale. It's going to be at the start. Then actually, so we actually want that to be in a box, because the compass should go right above this. Design decisions all around. We probably want the compass to be near the zoom buttons. At least that's where I usually see them in other apps. So maybe I'll do that. Yeah, let's try that out. I think the compass will still go, yeah, it's still giving us issues with the compass not having a place. So let's go ahead and just put it somewhere. Compass can go top, top right. All right, and we can now drag the map. We've got the widgets in the right spots. I'm kind of surprised that went as smoothly as it did, but we do have it sort of working again. I still need to work on the widget, on the layers, getting the paths and markers back and all of that. Switching maps works, and the nice thing about this is, well, I think, yeah. The nice thing about this is this dropdown actually requires no code at all. It's entirely, well, setting up the dropdown requires a little bit of code, but connecting it to the map requires no code. That's entirely done in this one line. We can delete that. Should still work. It's all this one line of code, at least on the app developer side. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool. Plays into the stuff I'm doing with Blueprint as well, trying to make user interfaces more reactive, like using a reactive programming paradigm to define user interfaces. That's what we do in web development, and it's one of the things I do like about web dev, is that sort of style of doing user interfaces. So it's been about an hour already. I think I got quite a bit done in an hour, but that's the time that I usually try to keep my live streams to. So thank you all for watching. If you like the streams that I do and the work that I do on GNOME, of course you can always support my work one time or monthly on GitHub sponsors. There's a link in the description. But if not, that's okay too. I'm glad that you enjoyed the stream. So thanks again for watching, and I'll be streaming again soon, hopefully.